It was my third week living alone in a cheap apartment on the edge of the city. The building was old, quiet, and honestly a little depressing. But the rent was low, and that was all I cared about at the time. During the day, everything felt normal. People moved around, doors slammed, TVs played through thin walls. But every night after midnight, the building became completely silent. Too silent. Like everyone disappeared at the same time. The first strange thing happened around 2:13 a.m. I was lying in bed watching videos on my phone when I heard a loud thud directly above me. It sounded like someone had dropped a heavy object onto the floor. I looked up at the ceiling and waited. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging footsteps. At first, I ignored it. Apartments are noisy. People walk around at night all the time. But after a while, I realized something strange. The apartment above me was supposed to be empty.
One night, curiosity got the best of me. I decided to go upstairs and check. The hallway outside my apartment was dark, except for one flickering light near the stairs. As I climbed upward, the sounds became louder. Step, drag, step, drag. I stopped in front of apartment 407. The noise suddenly stopped. The hallway became completely silent. I stood there staring at the old door. The wood looked damaged, and there was dust around the handle like nobody had touched it in years. Then I heard breathing. Very slow breathing. Right behind the door. I froze. Every instinct told me to walk away, but before I could move, the doorknob slowly turned from the inside. I backed away immediately. The door opened just a few inches. Darkness. Complete darkness. I couldn't see anything inside. Then I heard a voice whisper,
"Someone is inside your apartment."
My stomach dropped.
I ran downstairs without thinking. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone trying to unlock my door. The moment I stepped into my apartment, I knew something was wrong. The kitchen light was on. I always turned it off before bed. Slowly, I walked farther inside. Nothing looked disturbed. No broken windows, no missing items. But then, I noticed the bathroom door. It was slightly open, and the light inside was off.
I remember standing there, staring at that tiny dark gap between the door and the wall, feeling this horrible pressure in my chest. Then I heard movement inside. A small scratching sound. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a metal lamp, and slowly approached the bathroom. The scratching stopped. I pushed the door open. The bathroom was empty. But written across the mirror in wet letters were 4 words. I warned you already. I stumbled backwards so fast I hit the wall behind me. My breathing became uneven. I kept looking around the apartment, expecting someone to jump out at me. But there was nobody there. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. For a few seconds, there was only static. Then I heard the same voice from upstairs. Soft, calm, emotionless. Look outside. I slowly turned toward my living room window. At first, I didn't see anything, just the empty parking lot below. Then, movement. A figure was standing under the streetlight. Tall, completely completely still, watching my apartment. Even from 4 floors up, I could tell something about it wasn't normal. Its body looked wrong somehow. Too thin, too tall. And then it waved, slowly, directly at me. I shut the curtains immediately and backed away from the window. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. A second later, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow footsteps. Dragging footsteps. The exact same sounds from upstairs. They stopped right outside my door. Then came 3 knocks. Knock. 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 Silence. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then my phone buzzed again. One new message from the unknown number. Don't open the door. The knocking started again. This time louder. More aggressive. Bang! 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 The entire door shook. I backed away into the kitchen, gripping the lamp tightly. I wanted to call the police, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then suddenly, everything stopped. No knocks. No footsteps. Nothing. Complete silence. I waited several minutes before finally forcing myself to look through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But on the floor outside my apartment was something small. A key. I opened the door just enough to grab it. Attached to the key was a faded tag. The upstairs apartment. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went directly to the landlord's office and told him everything. At first, he looked annoyed. Then I mentioned apartment 407. The expression on his face changed instantly. He became pale, quiet. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "That apartment isn't empty," he whispered. I felt cold all over. "What do you mean?" The landlord stared at me for several seconds before answering. 3 years ago, a man locked himself inside apartment 407 after claiming someone in the building was following him. He swallowed hard. A week later, police found him dead in the bathroom. I felt my stomach twist. What happened to him? The landlord looked away. They never figured it out. I left the office immediately. That night, I packed my things and prepared to leave the apartment for good. But before I walked out, I noticed something sitting on the kitchen counter. A wet note. 4 words. "You left too late."
When I moved into apartment 216, the first thing people warned me about was the woman next door. "Don't talk to her too much," one tenant told me while I was carrying boxes upstairs. I laughed and asked why. The man hesitated before answering. "She acts strange at night." At the time, I assumed he meant she was loud or annoying. Every apartment building has someone like that. So I ignored the warning completely. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. The woman next door looked to be in her late 40s. Pale skin, long dark hair, quiet voice. I only saw her during the evenings, usually standing outside her apartment smoking cigarettes in silence. She never smiled, never made eye contact. But one thing about her always felt off. She would sometimes stand completely still in the hallway for several minutes, listening, not talking, not moving, just listening. Just listening. One night around midnight, I heard a soft knocking sound coming from the wall beside my bed. Knock. Knock.
Knock. 3 slow knocks. I ignored it at first. Then it happened again. This time louder. Knock. 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 I sat up and pressed my ear against the wall. Silence. Then suddenly, a whisper. Very faint. Can you hear her too? I jumped back immediately. The voice sounded like it came from inside the wall itself. I turned on my TV to drown out the sound, but around 20 minutes later, the knocking returned. Only now, it wasn't coming from the wall. It was coming from my front door. I walked slowly toward it and looked through the peephole. Nobody was there, but the hallway light was flickering, and I could hear breathing, heavy breathing, very close to the door. I stepped back quietly. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message contained only one sentence. Do not open the door for her. I stared at the screen in confusion. A second later, someone knocked again. This time, violently. Bang! 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 Then a woman's voice whispered from outside. Please help me. It sounded weak, terrified, almost crying. Every instinct told me someone outside needed help. But something about the voice felt unnatural, like it was trying too hard to sound human. I stayed completely silent. The knocking stopped. Then I heard footsteps slowly walking away down the hallway. The next morning, I asked the landlord about the woman next door. The moment I mentioned her apartment number, his expression changed. You talked to her? I told him no. He looked relieved. Then he quietly explained something that made my stomach tighten. The woman living next to me had called the police multiple times over the past year, claiming someone was entering her apartment at night. But every time officers arrived, they found nothing. No broken locks, no signs of entry, nothing. Eventually, people in the building assumed she was mentally ill. But according to the landlord, things got worse 3 weeks earlier. One night, neighbors heard screaming coming from her apartment around 3 a.m. Police broke the door open. The apartment was empty. No sign of the woman. She was never found. I felt cold all over. What do you mean, never found? The landlord stared at me carefully. The apartment next to yours is empty. I laughed nervously. That's impossible. I saw her last night. The landlord said nothing. Later that evening, I stood in the hallway, staring at the apartment beside mine. The lights inside were off. No sound. No movement. Slowly, I stepped closer. The door looked old and dusty, like it hadn't been opened in months. But then I noticed something. Fresh cigarette smoke drifting from underneath the door. My chest tightened. I knocked once. No response. Then I heard movement inside. Slow footsteps approaching the door. I backed away immediately.
The doorknob turned slightly, and a soft voice whispered from the other side. Did you let her in? Every hair on my body stood up. Before I could answer, the hallway lights suddenly shut off. Complete darkness swallowed the hallway. Then I heard another voice behind me. A woman's voice. Very close. Thank you for opening the door. I spun around, breathing directly beside my ear. Cold air touched my neck. I ran back into my apartment and slammed the door shut. The knocking started instantly. Not from outside the apartment, from inside the walls. Knock. 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 The sound moved through the apartment slowly, like someone crawling inside the walls around me. Kitchen. Living room. Bedroom. Closer. 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 Then it stopped directly behind my bed. Silence filled the apartment. And then I heard her voice again. Soft. Calm. Right behind me. She can hear you now. I turned around fast. Nothing. But written across my bedroom wall were 6 words. She is still in the building. I moved out the next morning. A week later, I searched online for information about the missing woman. I eventually found an old news article. It included her picture. The moment I saw it, my blood went cold. It wasn't the woman next door. The woman I had been seeing in the hallway every night was someone else entirely. After moving out of apartment 216, I promised myself I would never live in another old building again. For a while, things felt normal. No whispers, no knocking, no footsteps at 3 a.m. I started convincing myself the entire experience had just been stress mixed with paranoia. But 3 weeks later, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small black key. Attached to it was a tag. 216. My stomach dropped instantly. I threw the package away and tried to forget about it. But that same night, my phone rang at exactly 3:07 a.m. Unknown number. I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Static. Then a familiar voice whispered, "She followed you." The call ended. At that moment, every light in my apartment shut off. Complete darkness. I grabbed my phone flashlight and slowly looked around the room. That's when I noticed something terrifying. Wet footprints leading from the hallway into my bedroom. I couldn't breathe. The footprints looked fresh, like someone had walked through water moments earlier. Slowly, carefully, I followed them with the flashlight. They ended beside my closet. The door was slightly open. And from inside, I heard breathing. Very slow breathing. I backed away immediately, my entire body shaking. Then my phone buzzed again. One new message. Don't let her see you. Before I could react, the closet door creaked open by itself. Darkness spilled from inside like smoke. And then I saw her. The woman from apartment 216, standing unnaturally still inside the closet. Her face looked wrong, too pale. Her mouth stretched into a smile that was far too wide. But her eyes were completely black. She tilted her head slowly and whispered, "You opened the door."
The lights suddenly came back on. The closet was empty. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment immediately. I didn't even stop for the elevator. As I reached the parking lot outside, I finally looked back toward the building and froze. A figure was standing in my apartment window. 4th floor. Completely motionless. Watching me. Even from far away, I recognized the silhouette instantly.
The woman. Then, the lights inside the apartment shut off one by one, room after room, until only my bedroom light remained. And standing in the window was something taller than her. Much taller. A second figure slowly stepped into view behind her. Thin, unnatural. Its head nearly touched the ceiling. The woman's smile widened. Then, both figures disappeared into darkness. I left that city the next morning. For months, nothing strange happened again. Until one night, while scrolling online, I found a forum discussing abandoned apartment buildings. One post caught my attention immediately. The picture attached to it showed my old apartment building. The caption read, "Does anyone know why tenants keep disappearing here?" My chest tightened as I opened the comments.
Dozens of people shared stories about hearing knocking inside walls, whispers at night, and a woman asking to be let inside. But one comment stood out from all the others. It was posted only a few hours earlier. It said, "I think someone is inside my apartment." Attached was a blurry photo taken in darkness. At first, I couldn't understand what I was looking at. Then I noticed the hallway mirror in the background. A tall shadow figure was standing behind the person taking the picture, watching them. And beside it was the woman from apartment 216, smiling directly at the camera. A few seconds later, the post was deleted. The user was never active again. I still think about that building sometimes. About the knocking, the breathing, the voices inside the walls. But the thing that scares me most is realizing the woman was never trying to escape the building. She was trying to bring someone else to it. And judging by the stories still appearing online, she's still finding new tenants.